that was my healing journey, right? The podcast in itself. And I think it's a really nice way to knock on other people's door and say, hey, let's talk about your experience. And you will find that things, one, the universe will put them in you because they need to connect with you. Something pulls them to you. And then two is you will always find similarities in their story with your story. And then you will abstract those things for you. And then it is up to you to apply them. That's what I did.
After leaving the corporate 9-to-5 grind, I became the boss of my own spiritual business, helping others explore and navigate the human experience from insight, wisdom, and lessons learned along the way. Today, I help aspiring spiritual entrepreneurs gain the confidence to share their gifts with the world. Welcome to the Happy Healing Shop podcast. I'm your host, Trang Pham Nguyen, and each week we'll dive into incredible stories of strength, resilience, and transformation. So, if you are ready for some serious breakthroughs, laughs and tears, and stories that will inspire you, you are in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode where we explore mental health in a slightly different light. If you didn't know yet, I absolutely love trying new things, new foods, new types of spiritual readings. In fact, check out the Trang Tries It series on my YouTube channel if you haven't done so. In my guest today, Vee Sanchez, the host of Maybe This Is How It Starts podcast, tries out different healing modalities. Initially navigating her mental health journey through talk therapy, Vee found herself looking for alternative paths to healing, some that you've heard of, but some that might make you think, what? So join me today as I dive into Vee's journey and discover insight for anyone navigating their own path to healing. Hey Vee, thanks for coming on to the show.
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy to be here back. I know you were part of my show, so thank you for having me. I'm
Yes.
excited to share this space with you. Thanks.
Yeah, I wanted people to hear more about actually, I love when people try different modalities. So with your podcast, this is how it starts. It talks about conventional, unconventional ways of self-healing. So can you tell me your journey about why you started this podcast and why you want to look for different methods of healing when maybe talk therapy isn't enough?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, what ended up happening was just like everybody else, COVID came to be the turning point for so many of us, right? Your typical story of, depression, COVID, quarantined family, being crowded in one space with so many people. And if that wasn't you, you're probably on the other spectrum with just being confined by yourself and really having the opportunity to prioritize your emotions because you had nothing else, right? And so at that point, I was diagnosed with COVID in 2021, confined with my family in one house with like 8 people, just blood bunkers. My father was admitted into the hospital for a nervous breakdown. And it was really difficult to really navigate that situation. And so at the time, I was already doing therapy, talk therapy, and within a couple of months, my therapist said, I don't think I can do anything else for you. I sort of had found all the answers and within all of the things that I needed, but I still felt myself stuck, right? I had achieved the goal of therapy, but he said, you're recycling emotions, right? We make progress and then you still feel. So I felt like even though I understood the reason behind my emotions and behind my trauma, I wasn't really progressing at all. And so that started a lounge for me, reaching out, networking, asking questions. Anybody that said anything that sounded somewhat familiar to what I was feeling allowed me to reconnect and ask questions. And that allowed me to open a Pandora box to what the podcast became, because the podcast in itself became my healing journey, right? And so through the podcast, I go through different modalities, and there's still more to come. Where I talk to different people that came to me, people that I reached out to talk about the different modalities that could work in assisting someone navigate through their own mental health journey and personal discovery.
And, you just came back from surgery, right? So,
Correct.
what surgery did you have? And also, sometimes when people undergo surgery, they have, like, especially after it, have epiphanies from it or insights, or, they feel like the universe made them stop and really think about their lives. Did you have any of that?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because with the coach that I've been working on, she ran out of patience too. But it's like sometimes I have to slow down, and I've had to slow down the last 3 years, really, right after COVID. And so I just got back from surgery. Had surgery back in March 6th, and so I had a laparoscopic myectomy, and that is basically going into your uterus and removing fibroids. And so I have always heard and understand that in our womb is where we find, where we store trauma, where we store emotions, bottled emotions, right? And so they removed about a kilo or half a kilo, I believe, of fibroids. I had four fibroids, 8, 6, and 4 and 1 inch. So it was to give you an idea. I was carrying a 6 month fetus of fibroids. On top of that, my uterus was 3 times as large. So now that even though I didn't lose weight, you can totally see that I have a flatter stomach, and you're like, where did it go, right? uh, it's really there, right? And I think at that time I had the opportunity to ask myself, do you really want children? I said, no, this is it. This is my birth giving to my own freedom and my own enlightenment. So I feel I set an intention for that surgery to really let go of everything I had, and it was amazing. I think I had a connection back with my grandmother, that I did not understand her story, that I questioned a lot of things that maybe I didn't understand. No judgment, right? And allowed me to let go of my own journey, let go of maybe the things that I had been carrying, and really offer that as a sacrifice to allow freedom to whoever wanted to take it, right? I believe that because I'm not having children, I am okay with cleaning generational trauma so that those that come after me can have a clean slope. So,
So did you originally not want kids, or more like you were open to it, but when you realized you're not going to be able to have it from the surgery, then you had to grieve a bit?
well, I can have children. The reason why I had to decide to have a myectomy versus hysterectomy, I think it's called, is because I wanted to leave my uterus in there. Like I wanted to heal my body. I wanted my body parts to be there for an intention, because we have them for something, right? And so, other than biology, right? And so, I, since the age of 13, I somewhat said for the intention, I don't want children, right? For whatever reasons. I also think that the reasons I did not want to have children was because, as you may know, as from our previous podcast recording, sometimes we are not only raising ourselves, we are raising that generation that migrates into the United States, because they're also new to a country, to a land, to a language, to experiences, right? To their own trauma. They have the opportunity to unload, right? And as the first generation in this, or earlier generations, you raise your not, I'm not going to say I raised my parents, but they're growing with you, right? You're the one that's learning English, you're the one that's out in the world, and so you become that representative of your family. And so I find that maybe it was like a baby adult growing up, and so when I became an adult, now I am a kid. And so now as an adult, I've had the opportunity to really reconsider, and I said, do you want children? I don't. The idea is sexy, it's great, but I don't have the mental investment and capacity to give a child 100%. And I am fully aware of that. I'm an amazing aunt, I'm an amazing godmother, I'm an amazing tia, whatever you want to call. But after 3 hours, I walk out of the house with no regard, with no regrets, right? I think that sense of like, who's going to take care of you after you're old, and are you sure you don't want to leave something behind? Like that sort of like, well, plant a tree, write a book, and have a child. Yes. But I think it's more of an ego concept in me, if I were to have a child, than truly the investment of a child. I'm open to adoption of an older child, but I'm already 42, you know? So it's like there's not a lot of time. I don't want to be 16 chasing a toddler, right? Because it's not fair for the toddler. So when I went through that surgery where I went through 1 week of pain, I said, Veronica, do you want to have children? Like I asked my higher self, do you want to have children? I said, no, I don't have the emotional need to procreate. And so I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. I totally agree with everything you said as part of the No Children Club here. But and I once went to an event and someone channeled a message saying, because I asked about this, and they said, for people like us, we pour our energy into other people, into other people's children. And even though by blood, we stop our ancestry line because we're not procreating in our family line, we are already affecting so many other people's family lines from the time, the energy, and space we give them.
Mhm.
So I thought was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And there's more intentional work that I'm doing. You may have relationship to children within your life, right? I have my nieces, and I am doing intentional work so that I can clean the slope for them as much as I can. I can't do everything because they're not my children. I don't have a decision factor in their everyday life, but if there is something that I can do on my end to clear as much as I can so that when I'm gone, they can have somewhat of a cleaner slope, a larger chance to genuinely be happy, I so take it. What did my family say? To be honest with you, I really don't ask for permission. They've been supportive of mental health journeys. A lot of these modalities don't require a lot of broadcasting. I'm sure that there are people who have noticed the fact that I am a better human being just because I navigate through tests of patients, that things I would not be able to deal with or manage well before. Because I used to call myself the Mexican Karen. I flipped out in 5 seconds and whatever. And I'm far more patient, far more graceful, far more compassionate for myself because I was passing on the same judgment that was passed on to me, right? I was like, well, this is why are you doing that, right? Well, this is how you react. That's what my value set was set to. And so all of the things, shenanigans that I tried allowed me to really heal those wounds and be a better human being to other people.
Wow. It's also funny. I was a Mexican Karen, how you said that. With those healing modalities you experimented on your journey, what have you found that worked for you?
Absolutely. One of the things, a lot of the things is that one of the things that I found out is that your typical therapist, your traditional conventional therapist, is not very familiar with what is called neuroplasticity, right? Which is the training of the brain. It's a quick, easy thing if you find a good coach. Even with that, a lot of the conventional therapists are not very open to theories that are unconventional. And I don't say that your therapist has to be okay with you trying ayahuasca, right? And being high all the time. No. But I think they're so, my experience and the experience that I've had doing the research is that they're not really in tune with what's new, right? It takes somebody that's relatively independent in their research and trying to stay up to date to the new what's out new, right? What's working. And that's unfortunate because I think a lot of the neurodiversity or neuroplasticity, I'm sorry, um, technicians or practitioners are driven from psychotherapists or psychiatrists that open their own firms to bring a particular theory in which they perform these services. And basically is going through a series of techniques, which can be tapping, EDR or MDR, I believe, meditation, um, what is it called? um, things like that in a combination of sessions to bring you an experience and liberating yourself from a set emotion, right? So, like, let's say I have anger, right? You'll work on that emotion through that session. What I learned in the podcast is that I think I must have connected with about two or three professionals that offer that, right? They felt like they had the calling the one way, which is great. But they actually all offer neuroplasticity. They were retraining the brain, which is retraining and working through PTSD or CPTSD. What I found out, and this is a conversation that I had with my cousin, who is a psychiatric nurse, who came back and said, like, "Hey, how did you overcome your borderline personality disorder? Because I had that too." And I said, it kind of went away, right? My urge to go crazy after people went away because I was crazy. And I'm still crazy, but I have more self control, right? Because the negative thoughts still running through you. You just have, like, right. So I told her, if you manage to address your PTSD, what event in your life caused these emotions that are making you react the way you are, and you manage to heal that emotion, then the reliving the experience through the triggers that you put yourself through every day, where somebody may bring you back to that original trauma, are no longer be triggering, right? You're no longer triggered to, it's like a phobia, right? If you manage to liberate yourself from that phobia, like a spider phobia, you're going to see other spiders and you're no longer going to freak out. So if you saw a spider that caused you a phobia to react in that, you as a borderline personality, this sort of person, go on and chase somebody else with a knife because you were triggered by that spider, which is just a domino effect, you're no longer going to do that. Why? Because you address that original emotion that comes with your PTSD. And so she was like, she had a really hard. She's like, well, but I have to treat their borderline personality before. It's like, no. If you go back to the root of the cause, which is PTSD, we all have PTSD. It's sort of like the root of every single mental health issue, other than like bipolar or anything like that. I don't want to get above that, but if you manage to do that, you'll be able to address a lot of the things that come. And I think going to retraining your brain is, to me at least, the single most important thing that helped my journey, and then can honestly do miracles for so many people. Unfortunately, it's expensive and it's not accessible to everybody. That's the downside, right? But I think to me that was the single most important thing in my healing journey.
Were there any, was there a particular moment or experience that stood out to you where you realized, oh, I can see myself healing right now? Or, oh, I realize I'm not Mexican Karen anymore?
Yeah. So I can't tell you Mexican Karen because I think Mexican Karen eventually disappeared with the so many sessions. So I met somebody, which I did talk to towards the end of the podcast, and I will be releasing that podcast soon. Is Danielle from Rest, RREST, and people can Google search and they'll find a couple of providers. But I would hope that they find their main portal and get a little bit of information from there. But through the experience which I did kind of narrate before, is I had connected with my life coach and I said, I'm having trouble after COVID moving out of my parents because I'm dealing with a lot of phobias and a lot of like imposter syndrome, a lot of like self doubt, a lot of it at 39, right? And so I'm like, I need to like be okay with me leaving my family behind in the middle of a pandemic and live on my life because Veronica V, is stuck. And so I was in the middle of a chaos. She's like, well, I've tried this and it really worked out for me. I was like, I'm willing to eat shit if I have to, right? So I reached out to this coach. It was, I think, she charged me whatever. And we went through those emotions. We walked out. I moved out within 45 days. 45 days. But the fact that I actually, without any remorse, like that attachment, that codependence that I have, was not a deciding factor. I moved. I mean, I was capable of doing these things. It's just that I really needed to detach myself from the codependence, right? Within 45 days, I did it, right? And I was able to navigate through those emotions. And I was like, holy shit, we got to keep doing this. This is a priority, right? Um, and that was the single most evolving factor. She told me, whatever you work on within 2 to 3 days. And I thought it was like more manifestations, like, all right, we're gonna lit up candles, right? No, you really need to learn. Well, they teach you how to, program the brain to detach yourself from those emotions so that whatever is holding you back, you are no longer captive of those emotions. And only you can decide, right? But the technique is the same, right? It's like you may have an infection. We know the antibiotic is a solution, but everybody may have a different code of infection, right? It's just sort of like this unique formula that may work for you. And I think it works wonderful. I really hope that people who need it really find themselves with the opportunity of gaining access to it.
Yeah, it just shows how powerful our mind
Yeah.
really is. There's so much with the brain. And on your show, you have guests that talk about different like healing methods. Were there any really different ones that surprised you?
Um, I think, let's say, Yes, it was kink work, really. And you're like, how does this heal, right? It's a different modality. I'm not saying that this is for anyone, but it really caught me because it was a rabbit hole, going down the rabbit hole, right? I was open to it. I had experience, some curiosity with that type of work back when I was in college, never pursued it. And so I'm like, I'm gonna go to this mentorship program, which it doesn't start with kink work. It starts with more of finding who you are, what you do, but it's more on working our self actualization, right? And so I met with the two facilitators. It went so well. It was such an amazing weekend, and I promised to be back, which I haven't been back because I just haven't had the time. But it was really different. Um, it was really a different approach because there were things that, even though neuroplasticity techniques work very well, there are still certain lingering things, right? One of the biggest struggle for me was healing my inner child, right? And whether I came across a lot of techniques to bring her, I had trouble finding her, I had trouble understanding her. And even though I went through the neuroplasticity techniques, I had not healed her, right? I understood her, but I couldn't deal with her because all she wanted to do was cry. And I couldn't hold myself to cry because all I was doing was cry and cry and cry, and I was getting depressed. And there's an episode where I talk about that, where you kind of learn to leave those emotions, and you understand that there are things that you cannot address at that moment. I think it's also okay to say, hey, I don't know how to solve this within myself. Let's leave it there. Let's not stay there. Let's keep moving. The most important thing in life that I've learned as an adult is you have to keep moving, right? In a good direction, right? If you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, move to a different corner of the puzzle and work there, because the solutions for other things will trickle down. And so eventually, when I got to kink work, I realized there are things in that area, in that type of work, that I can heal my inner child towards, right? We don't have to go in there because I don't remember much of it, but all I can tell you is that subconsciously I know that I have pending work, and that is how I would like to address it, in this sense of holding space for yourself. Um, because I come from a codependent alcoholic background, I suffered a lot of codependence and making myself invisible in order to survive. That, you just, there's a lot of that going on. And so a lot of those things I'm now working on, right? And I find that King may allow myself to go from going, going from feeling invisible to feeling visible to holding space, right? It's more of what that journey and the intention that it brings. And kink work allows you an express pass, at least to me, to the things I want to achieve within my own persona. That's how I see it. It may not be for everybody, um, but I think it's very interesting where I found that I could um, learn more about myself. But all of this is, I think, something that is achievable when you're working on your self actualization, which comes after healing your wound, your mental health journey.
And when you say kink work, is it what I'm thinking, where it's like finding what kinks you like and exploring that?
Yes, but I think it's a little bit more structured. It's more about working with someone that is going to help you navigate through the emotions, set up a goal, and using the different modalities that they offer to achieve that, right? Let me give you an example, right? Like I said, you can keep this or you don't have to, but I'll give you an example of how I saw that. So the one of the facilitators, right, navigates themselves through um master and submissives, right? As you may understand that. And one day he was online broadcasting that he had one of his submissives, right, walking around in full gear, full chains. And the goal for her was to hold space for her. And I was like, wow, that's really bold. I mean, that's how she wanted to do it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's not my own journey, right? I'm not a slave, I'm not a master. I don't have to navigate through those modalities. There's different ways, right? So I'm going to give you where I think can help me, right? And so I have trouble crying. and someone told me you need to cry to relieve. And I also have a mixed experience with pain. And so I want to explore pain to release anger and to release anguish, right? That might be an extreme path for someone, but to me, it seems like we don't have to talk about it for hours. We let's experience it. And if I'm gonna sit there and maybe release, because you put yourself on the edge, right? If somebody slaps you, they really trigger your nervous system. It is about activating your nervous system, right? I'm not an expert on this. I'm just navigating the topic based on my experience. And so my express way of getting to that inner emotion to really cry it out, to really say I'm done, maybe through the experience of pain. There's many ways of doing pain in a safe way. It could be there's people that like to be humiliated, there's people that like to be spanked, there's people that like to be cut. I'm not saying that I'm going to go through those avenues, right? There's people that like to maybe be walked around town like that young lady. But to me, it was like I understood what she meant. She needed to someone to teach her, to bring her along and hold space for her. Maybe you've been invisible all your life. Maybe people have been humiliating. Whatever you are, if in whatever capacity, because she was submissive, right? In whatever capacity, you have the right to hold space for yourself however you want to, in whatever capacity, with all the pride in the world. And by doing that, by really building that character, you will build the respect of others within yourself. You will be confident enough to say, this is who I am, regardless of what I am. Like I said, that was her journey. That's how I understood it. But it really allowed me to understand that this could be an area where I can explore and maybe reach to the other side. I don't see it as a main factor of my life. You probably won't see me wearing leather in the street. But I think it's definitely something that I want to consider and evolve a little further. And so that's on my bucket list.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, it sounds kind of like with the anchor and stuff, it sounds like honestly a different way of releasing energy. And
Mhm.
normally that can be done through breath work or that, for me, that's what I've used, but it is a different form of releasing at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
right? And sometimes you have to find different methods that might work for you to help you do that.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned this that yes, you could do it with breath work. Yes, you could do it with meditation, walk in the woods. Absolutely. But you have to understand that one of the things that I tell one of my mentors is I need you to be a little more forward with me, right? On the feedback you provide me. I need you to be very upfront because that was the way I received feedback as a child. And you don't have to be derogative, you don't have to be negative. You just need to be a little more rough. Like let's be forward with it. You can be very respectful, very encouraging, but don't roam around the bush because I may not receive it or interpret it as I need to. It may not be as engaging as I interpret. So sometimes you need something that's a little bit more shaking in your life to really navigate or release emotions, just like you said, because that's who we are and that's how we were brought up, right? Trauma, that's what makes you, right? We're soft outside, but sometimes we just need to be shaken up because that's really the only way, or not the only way, but the most engaging way to navigate and release our negative emotions. Some people box, right?
Yeah. And so, like, through this whole journey, what advice would you offer to someone that might be feeling, stuck on their healing journey, or they don't know where to turn next, or how to take that first step?
Absolutely. One is stay curious, but it's really good to say, hey, what does that mean, right? Stay curious, stay open. But one of the things that ought to work for me is look for keywords. There are things in your own journey, certain emotions. How do you feel? I feel frustrated. I feel that when this happened to me, I felt that way, right? And someone is talking about something and something catches your eye because we're always going to be a bystander in someone else's conversation, or we're going to be a bystander in a lecture, or we're going to be a bystander in a TV show or in a podcast or in an article or anything that we're curious about. We're like, certain experience, like Google stuff. Sometimes we Google certain things that we go through, right? That will be a rabbit hole for you because that will lead you into something else. So just continue searching, right? So if I have borderline personality disorder, somebody's like, you're borderline, right? Look that up. Look what borderline is, right? Get yourself curious, do the research, watch movies. That is what led to me into other keywords, right? Into other ideas that brought to me, sort of like the algorithm of your brain. You're calling things for yourself, right? So you have to activate your natural algorithm, right? If there is something that you're stuck with, that you don't know where to start, search whatever is more relevant to yourself, energy, meditation, whatever you're curious, just search it. And I think if something doesn't lead you to something that's satisfying, keep searching a different direction. And information will always lead to another, to more information. I say it's always like TikTok, right? One video will lead you to the other one, and suddenly you're someone else's algorithm, and you're like, what am I doing here? And now you have a new hobby, right? Yeah.
Awesome. And finally, where can people find out more about you and get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I am on Spotify or any type of platform that you can find me to listen to the podcast. I have a podcast that is called Maybe This Is How It Starts. Just type in Maybe This Is How It Starts on Spotify. You may also reach me via email at v.happy@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and the different ways of healing that, has helped out on your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. I love seeing you again. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed the episode with V and learning more about different ways of healing and how she found out what worked for her. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button, hit that follow button right now so you don't miss out on any episodes coming up. And it will really help us reach more of our vibrant community. I'd be really grateful if you left me a review over on Apple and Spotify too, as those reviews help other people find my podcast. If you're looking for a beautiful and kind spiritual community to talk on exploring different healing tools and modalities, just like V did, join my Facebook group, Happy Healers. Or you can join the Happy Healing Club, my membership that includes access to guided meditations, live healing events, and workshops, palm reading, numerology, astrology, happy hours, and so much more. It also includes our inner child shadow work healing journal. I'll include all that down below in the show notes. And until next time, keep staying true to yourself, keep going for your dreams, and always remember that you are capable of extraordinary things. Until next time, stay awesome, my friend. Bye for now.